You're listening to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, created to help you succeed in your educational journey. Learn more at baremetalcyber.com, where additional prepcasts, books, and training materials await. Let's get started. Compliance frameworks give organizations structured criteria for assessing and demonstrating control effectiveness in cloud environments. Rather than leaving security and governance to interpretation, frameworks provide recognized benchmarks, creating a shared language between providers, auditors, regulators, and customers. They answer questions like, what controls must we have in place? How do we prove they are working? How do we compare across providers or industries? In cloud, frameworks are particularly vital because responsibilities are distributed between customer and provider. Without external standards, each party might define adequacy differently, leading to mismatched expectations and gaps. Frameworks reduce ambiguity by documenting baseline practices, from encryption requirements to audit reporting. They also provide assurance to customers and regulators, who can rely on third-party attestations rather than inspecting every control directly. In short, compliance frameworks transform promises into measurable, auditable commitments, enabling cloud adoption with confidence. ISO IEC 27001 is one of the most widely recognized frameworks for information security. It defines requirements for establishing, implementing, maintaining, and continually improving an information security management system, or ISMS. Unlike purely technical standards, ISO 27001 is risk-based, meaning organizations must identify risks to information assets and design controls that mitigate them appropriately. Certification requires not only control implementation but also governance processes for continual review and improvement. In cloud contexts, ISO 27001 provides assurance that providers manage security systematically, not as a collection of ad hoc practices. Think of it as quality certification for security. Just as ISO 9001 signals manufacturing rigor, ISO 27001 signals disciplined information protection. Customers benefit because certification demonstrates a provider has undergone independent evaluation of its governance and controls. For organizations themselves, pursuing ISO 27001 builds resilience by institutionalizing security as an ongoing management priority. ISO IEC 27002 complements ISO 27001 by providing detailed guidance for selecting and implementing controls. While 27001 specifies that controls must be established, 27002 offers practical advice on how to achieve them. For example, where 27001 requires access control, 27002 discusses role-based permissions, authentication methods, and session management. In cloud adoption, this guidance is invaluable, helping organizations align technical configurations with overarching ISMS requirements. It functions like a handbook for practitioners, ensuring that abstract obligations translate into real safeguards. Importantly, 27002 is not prescriptive. Organizations tailor recommendations to context, industry, and risk appetite. This flexibility allows companies to innovate in cloud while still maintaining compliance. By using 27002 alongside 27001, organizations gain both accountability and actionable practices, ensuring that security is not only certified on paper, but also operationalized effectively in day-to-day environments. ISO IEC 27017 extends the ISO 27000 family with cloud-specific guidance. It addresses the unique challenges of shared responsibility, offering recommended controls for both providers and customers. For instance, it clarifies expectations for virtualization security, administrative privilege management, and segregation of customer data. Without such guidance, customers may mistakenly assume providers cover all risks, while providers may leave ambiguous gaps. 27017 resolves these uncertainties by providing concrete roles and responsibilities. Think of it as a manual for tenants and landlords sharing a building. It specifies who locks the doors, who maintains common spaces, and who handles emergencies. For auditors and regulators, 27017 provides a standardized lens for evaluating cloud controls. For organizations, adopting 27017 guidance ensures that governance frameworks recognize the unique dynamics of cloud infrastructure, strengthening compliance with minimal ambiguity. ISO/IEC 27018 focuses specifically on the protection of personally identifiable information, or PII, in public cloud environments where the provider acts as a processor. It establishes guidelines for lawful processing, consent, data subject rights, and transparency. For example, it requires that providers disclose data location and subcontractors, and that customers can request deletion of personal data when lawful. 27018 aligns closely with privacy laws like GDPR, offering organizations a recognized benchmark for compliance. It is especially valuable for customers outsourcing sensitive workloads, since it provides assurance that providers meet global expectations for PII handling. Imagine entrusting valuables to a storage facility that guarantees not only physical safety but also strict rules about who may access or move them. Similarly, 27018 assures organizations that cloud providers enforce privacy safeguards consistently, building trust in cloud adoption where personal data is at stake. ISO/IEC 27701 extends the ISMS framework into privacy, establishing a Privacy Information Management System, or PIMS. While ISO 27001 focuses broadly on security, 27701 integrates privacy governance by addressing obligations such as data minimization, consent tracking, and breach notification. It provides guidance for both controllers and processors, ensuring accountability across the data lifecycle. For organizations, certification to 27701 demonstrates maturity in handling personal data, complementing GDPR compliance. In cloud, 27701 is particularly relevant for hybrid scenarios where organizations act as controllers but depend on providers as processors. Think of 27701 as a bolt-on privacy module to the broader ISMS. Security remains the foundation, but privacy is layered on top to ensure completeness. Adoption of 27701 signals to regulators, customers, and partners that privacy is not an afterthought, but a structured, auditable discipline embedded within overall governance. System and Organization Controls, or SOC reports, provide independent assurance over provider controls. Unlike ISO certifications, which are global standards, SOC reports are attestation engagements performed by auditors under the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants framework. SOC reports evaluate whether controls are designed effectively and, in some cases, operating effectively over time. They allow customers to gain confidence in a provider's practices without conducting their own exhaustive audits. SOC reports act like third-party inspection certificates for buildings. Tenants rely on them to confirm safety rather than rechecking every system themselves. In the cloud, SOC reports are indispensable for due diligence, procurement, and compliance audits. They demonstrate not only the presence of controls, but also the provider's willingness to open itself to independent scrutiny, reinforcing trust in the shared responsibility model. SOC 1 reports focus specifically on internal controls over financial reporting, or ICFR, at service organizations. These are most relevant when a provider's services affect customer financial statements. For example, a payroll provider hosting data in the cloud must prove controls that ensure accuracy, integrity, and confidentiality of financial data. SOC 1 reports help auditors of customer organizations rely on provider systems with confidence. They are like bank audits, ensuring records and transactions are accurate so financial reporting remains reliable. In cloud contexts, SOC 1 is less common for general infrastructure, but essential in financial or accounting-related services. Customers evaluating such providers rely heavily on SOC 1 evidence, since errors could cascade directly into regulatory filings, investor confidence, and legal obligations. SOC 1 therefore underpins trust in financial data handled in cloud ecosystems. Society 2 reports, by contrast, evaluate controls against the trust services criteria: security, availability, processing integrity, confidentiality, and privacy. These criteria extend beyond finance, making SOC 2 highly relevant for cloud providers broadly. For example, a Society 2 report may confirm that a provider enforces access controls, maintains uptime through redundancy, and ensures processing accuracy. Society 2 Type 1 reports describe control design at a point in time, while SOC 2 Type 2 evaluate operation over a period, usually 6 to 12 months. This distinction is critical. Type 2 provides stronger assurance of sustained effectiveness. Society 2 is often the gold standard for cloud customers, offering confidence in provider practices without direct inspection. It is like a health certificate, not just showing clean facilities on one day, but proving cleanliness was maintained throughout the year. Society 3 reports provide a general use summary derived from SOC 2 results. Unlike SOC 2, which is restricted to auditors and customers under confidentiality agreements, SOC 3 is public and less detailed. It offers organizations a way to demonstrate commitment to security and trustworthiness without revealing sensitive information about controls. For customers, SOC 3 is a useful starting point, but it lacks the depth required for detailed risk assessments. It is like a restaurant posting a health grade in the window, reassuring to the public, but not the same as the full inspection report. Cloud providers often publish SOC 3 reports on their websites as a transparency measure. While limited, SOC 3 adds reputational value, signaling openness and alignment with recognized assurance frameworks. It complements, rather than replaces, deeper attestation reports like SOC 2. The Statement on Standards for Attestation Engagements 18, or SSAE 18, underpins Society reports. It sets the rules auditors follow when conducting attestation engagements. SSAE 18 defines how service auditors evaluate controls, design tests, and report results. For customers, this standard ensures consistency and comparability across Society reports, regardless of provider or industry. Without such a foundation, each audit might vary in scope, reducing reliability. SSAE 18 is like building codes for inspections. It doesn't define the structure itself, but ensures inspectors evaluate it consistently. In cloud compliance, SSAE 18 provides the confidence that Society reports are not subjective but grounded in a recognized professional framework. This standard ensures that when customers review Society results, they can trust both the process and the conclusions, reinforcing the credibility of provider attestations. The Cloud Security Alliance's Cloud Controls Matrix, or CSA CCM, provides a comprehensive set of cloud-specific controls mapped to multiple frameworks. It functions as a Rosetta Stone, aligning requirements from ISO, NIST, PCI, HIPAA, and others into a unified matrix. Organizations use it to ensure consistency across overlapping frameworks, reducing redundancy in assessments. For example, a control requiring encryption may map simultaneously to ISO 27001, SOC 2, and PCI DSS. The CCM simplifies evidence collection, allowing one artifact to satisfy multiple obligations. It is like a universal translator, enabling different languages of compliance to converge into a common understanding. For cloud providers, publishing mappings to the CCM demonstrates transparency and alignment. For customers, it accelerates audits and due diligence, ensuring frameworks are addressed comprehensively without duplication of effort. The Security, Trust, Assurance, and Risk Registry, commonly called the STAR Registry, publishes provider self-assessments and certifications against the CSA CCM. Providers submit detailed questionnaires or certifications, which are made public to customers and regulators. STAR provides transparency, allowing organizations to compare providers and assess maturity quickly. A STAR entry is like a nutritional label on packaged food. It summarizes key attributes for easy comparison, while linking back to deeper details if required. Customers benefit by accessing structured, standardized information without launching their own bespoke assessments. For providers, STAR participation signals commitment to transparency and industry alignment. It builds trust in a competitive marketplace, where openness about controls often differentiates leaders from laggards. STAR registry thus extends the value of CCM into a practical, global assurance tool. The Federal Risk and Authorization Management Program, or FedRAMP, standardizes cloud authorization for U.S. federal agencies. Providers must undergo rigorous assessments by accredited third-party organizations to achieve authorization at defined impact levels: low, moderate, or high. FedRAMP ensures federal agencies can adopt cloud with consistent assurance, avoiding redundant evaluations. For example, once a provider attains FedRAMP Moderate, multiple agencies can leverage the authorization. FedRAMP is like a passport. It allows providers to enter the federal market with recognized credentials. Beyond government, FedRAMP often influences private sector expectations, since its controls align with NIST standards. For providers, authorization is demanding but rewarding, opening access to high-value contracts. For customers, FedRAMP signals a provider's ability to meet some of the most stringent assurance requirements in cloud. The Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard, or PCI DSS, defines requirements for protecting cardholder data. In cloud, PCI DSS applies to any environment storing, processing, or transmitting payment information. It mandates controls such as network segmentation, encryption, logging, and vulnerability management. Compliance is validated through annual assessments by qualified security assessors. PCI DSS is not a law but a contractual requirement imposed by payment brands. It functions like rules for participating in a club. Membership depends on adherence. For cloud users, PCI DSS ensures financial transactions remain secure, protecting consumers and reducing fraud. Providers hosting payment workloads must demonstrate compliance, often through attestation of shared controls. PCI DSS exemplifies how industry-driven standards can carry weight equal to formal regulation, shaping architectures and operational practices across cloud ecosystems. The Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, or HIPAA, imposes safeguards for protected health information in healthcare. In cloud, HIPAA requires covered entities and their business associates, including providers, to implement administrative, physical, and technical controls. Business Associate Agreements, or BAAs, codify these obligations in contracts, ensuring shared responsibility is clear. HIPAA safeguards include access controls, audit logging, data integrity, and secure transmission. Non-compliance risks significant fines and reputational damage. In cloud adoption, HIPAA often shapes provider selection since not all services are eligible for BAAs. HIPAA is like a set of safety rules in a hospital. Without adherence, patients, confidentiality, and trust collapse. For organizations handling health data, HIPAA compliance in cloud ensures not only legal protection, but also ethical stewardship of some of the most sensitive personal information. For more cyber-related content and books, please check out cyberauthor.me. Also, there are other prepcasts on cybersecurity and more at baremetalcyber.com. Mapping and inheritance are crucial concepts in cloud compliance because they connect provider attestations to customer controls. When a provider demonstrates compliance with ISO 27001 or SOC 2, customers can inherit those controls as part of their assurance, provided they implement their share of responsibilities. User Entity Control Considerations, or UECC, clarify what remains with the customer. For example, a provider may enforce encryption at rest, but customers must configure identity access policies correctly. Mapping ensures these boundaries are documented so controls are not double-counted or ignored. Think of it like a shared building. The landlord certifies fire safety systems, but tenants must maintain clear exits. Without careful mapping, customers risk assuming coverage that doesn't exist. With it, compliance becomes efficient, as organizations reuse provider evidence while staying accountable for their own obligations, creating a defensible and cooperative assurance structure. Scoping defines the boundaries of compliance assessments, determining which accounts, regions, services, and data types are included. A narrow scope may certify only one business unit or environment, while a broad scope covers multiple geographies and workloads. Proper scoping is critical because certifications and audits apply only to what is defined. For example, a Society 2 report may cover a provider's primary cloud platform, but exclude ancillary services. Customers must read scope carefully to avoid relying on incomplete assurance. Scoping is like a map legend. It clarifies the territory under review. Expanding or refining scope requires planning and resources, but doing so ensures that compliance reflects reality rather than assumptions. Without precise scoping, organizations may face gaps where critical systems fall outside certification. With it, assurance is clear, comprehensive, and directly tied to business risks and regulatory obligations. Evidence management organizes the artifacts that prove compliance. These artifacts include policies, technical configurations, system logs, tickets, and approvals. Managing evidence systematically ensures traceability. Each control objective can be linked to supporting documents. In cloud, evidence must be collected continuously, since environments change rapidly. Centralized repositories and versioning help avoid confusion during audits. Think of evidence like receipts. Without them, claims cannot be verified, but with them, expenditures are defensible. Strong evidence management also enables reuse, as the same artifact may satisfy multiple frameworks. For example, encryption logs may serve as proof for ISO 27001, SOC 2, and HIPAA simultaneously. Organized evidence reduces audit fatigue, accelerates assessments, and strengthens stakeholder trust. Without it, compliance efforts collapse into last-minute scrambles, undermining credibility. Effective evidence management is therefore both a technical and cultural discipline, ensuring transparency and accountability across frameworks. Continuous compliance ensures that organizations remain aligned with frameworks between audits. Traditional compliance models rely on annual assessments, which often miss drift or misconfigurations. By contrast, continuous compliance leverages policy as code, monitoring tools, and automated alerts to enforce requirements in real time. For instance, infrastructure pipelines may block deployment of unencrypted resources, while CSPM platforms scan continuously for violations. This approach is like using a fitness tracker instead of an annual checkup. Small deviations are detected early, preventing bigger problems. Continuous compliance reduces reliance on manual audits and provides defensible evidence at any moment. It also reassures regulators and customers that compliance is not a one-time performance, but an ongoing discipline. In the fast-changing cloud environment, continuous compliance is not optional. It is the only realistic way to keep frameworks meaningful and enforceable across dynamic infrastructures. Bridge letters and interim updates address assurance gaps between reporting periods. SOC reports, for example, often cover 6 or 12-month windows, leaving gaps before the next report is issued. During these gaps, providers may issue bridge letters affirming no significant changes have occurred. Interim updates may also summarize incidents or remediation efforts. Customers rely on these updates to maintain trust without waiting for the next formal audit. It is like receiving a doctor's note between annual checkups, confirming health remains stable. Without bridge letters, customers might face uncertainty about provider controls, especially in regulated industries where continuous assurance is required. However, bridge letters are self-assertions, not independent attestations, so customers must treat them cautiously. Combined with other monitoring practices, they provide necessary continuity, ensuring assurance remains current and defensible across reporting cycles. Controlled testing methods are the core techniques auditors use to evaluate compliance. These include inquiry, observation, inspection, and re-performance. Inquiry involves asking stakeholders about processes, while observation watches them in action. Inspection examines artifacts like logs or configurations, and reperformance replicates control activities to confirm results. Sampling plans determine how much evidence must be tested for reliability. In cloud audits, testing may involve inspecting IAM policies, observing patch management, or reperforming backup restores. These methods function like quality control in manufacturing. Products are tested through multiple lenses to ensure consistency. For customers, understanding these methods clarifies what provider attestations truly validate. For auditors, structured testing ensures fairness and repeatability. Without rigorous testing, reports lose credibility. With it, compliance frameworks provide genuine assurance that controls are not only designed well, but also operating effectively in practice. Residual risk documentation ensures that gaps uncovered during assessments are acknowledged, justified, and tracked. No organization achieves perfect compliance. Instead, they identify where risks remain and decide whether to accept, reduce, or transfer them. Residual risk records include explanations, compensating controls, acceptance dates, and owners. For instance, if a legacy system cannot meet encryption standards, a compensating control such as network segmentation may be applied, with residual risk formally accepted. This documentation is like labeling expired medication. Risks remain, but they are visible and managed rather than hidden. Regulators and auditors often expect to see residual risk logs, as they demonstrate transparency. Without documentation, organizations may appear careless or deceptive. Recording residual risk acknowledges limitations honestly while showing accountability. It turns imperfection into a managed condition rather than an unmanaged liability, reinforcing maturity in compliance programs. Multi-framework harmonization addresses the reality that organizations must comply with multiple standards simultaneously. Instead of duplicating work, harmonization maps controls across frameworks, allowing one piece of evidence to satisfy many. For example, encryption logs may map to ISO 27001, SOC 2 confidentiality, and PCI DSS requirements. Tools like CSA's Cloud Controls Matrix support this cross-referencing. Harmonization is like learning multiple languages with a shared root. One phrase translates across several contexts. Without harmonization, compliance teams drown in redundancy, chasing the same evidence for different frameworks. With it, they build efficiency and reduce fatigue. Harmonization also strengthens assurance by ensuring consistency across frameworks. If one standard requires a control and another does not, mapping highlights the gap, enabling proactive action. Multi-framework harmonization thus makes compliance sustainable and strategic, rather than fragmented and overwhelming. Customer responsibility matrices clarify which controls are the provider's responsibility and which remain with the tenant. These matrices are especially critical in shared responsibility models, where confusion is common. For example, a provider may encrypt storage infrastructure, but customers must manage access keys and user permissions. Responsibility matrices ensure that attestations can be relied upon accurately, preventing customers from assuming coverage where none exists. They are like chore charts in households. Tasks are divided, ensuring nothing is overlooked. In cloud compliance, these charts define boundaries across frameworks like Society and ISO, providing clarity during audits. Without responsibility matrices, shared models risk collapsing into finger-pointing after incidents. With them, organizations can demonstrate accountability, trace control ownership, and align their practices with provider commitments, creating a defensible and cooperative assurance posture. Data residency and privacy overlays integrate regional laws, such as GDPR, into global security frameworks. While ISO and Society provide general control structures, overlays adapt them to jurisdiction-specific obligations. For example, GDPR requires lawful transfer mechanisms, which must be layered onto cloud controls. Privacy overlays also address consent, subject rights, and breach notification obligations. They are like regional adaptations of international recipes. The core remains consistent, but local ingredients reflect culture and law. In cloud, overlays ensure that compliance frameworks do not overlook legal mandates tied to geography. Without them, organizations risk meeting technical standards while violating regional privacy laws. Overlays transform global frameworks into practical tools for diverse jurisdictions, ensuring cloud adoption is both compliant and culturally aware. They make frameworks flexible enough to support global operations without diluting accountability. Supply chain assurance extends compliance beyond the immediate provider to subcontractors and marketplace solutions. Since cloud environments are interconnected, risks may originate from dependencies not directly visible to customers. Supply chain assurance requires providers to validate their vendors, obtain attestations, and cascade obligations contractually. For example, if a provider relies on a subcontractor for support services, that subcontractor must also maintain SOC or ISO compliance. It is like ensuring every link in a food chain follows hygiene standards. One weak link can spoil the entire system. Without supply chain assurance, customers inherit hidden risks from providers, partners. With it, they gain confidence that controls apply consistently across the ecosystem. Supply chain assurance strengthens resilience, ensuring that compliance frameworks extend outward, covering the real-world complexity of modern cloud environments where trust is distributed. Reporting to stakeholders transforms audit results into accessible summaries. Reports must explain scope, findings, exceptions, and remediation commitments in terms understandable to executives, boards, and regulators. Instead of technical jargon, they use business language, financial impact estimates, and risk prioritization. For example, a Society 2 report summary might highlight gaps in monitoring controls and note remediation timelines. Reporting is like translating medical results for patients. Technical accuracy matters, but clarity and relevance ensure decisions can be made. Good reporting builds trust, ensuring stakeholders see compliance as transparent and proactive. Poor reporting, by contrast, undermines credibility and leaves audiences uncertain. Stakeholder reporting ensures frameworks not only guide controls, but also communicate assurance outward, reinforcing confidence in governance and operations. Readiness assessments and gap analyses prepare organizations for first-time certifications or higher maturity. These exercises evaluate current practices against framework requirements, identifying gaps, and creating remediation roadmaps. For example, a readiness assessment for ISO 27001 may reveal missing risk assessments or incomplete evidence trails. Conducting these reviews beforehand prevents costly audit failures and accelerates certification. It is like rehearsing before a performance. Weaknesses are corrected before the audience arrives. Readiness assessments also build cultural awareness, showing teams what to expect during formal audits. Gap analyses highlight both quick wins and long-term investments. Together, they reduce uncertainty, making compliance a strategic project rather than a stressful scramble. For cloud adoption, readiness ensures organizations are not surprised by framework expectations, strengthening resilience and demonstrating maturity to auditors and stakeholders alike. Anti-patterns in compliance undermine assurance and credibility. Checkbox compliance reduces frameworks to a formality, where organizations document controls without verifying effectiveness. Stale mappings occur when frameworks are not updated as environments change, leaving gaps in coverage. Over-reliance on provider reports without implementing tenant controls creates false confidence. These anti-patterns are like cramming for an exam without understanding the material superficially sufficient but fragile under scrutiny. In cloud, such behaviors expose organizations to regulatory penalties, audit failures, and reputational harm. Recognizing and avoiding these pitfalls is as important as mastering frameworks themselves. Anti-patterns remind professionals that compliance is not a one-time event, but a living discipline requiring accuracy, currency, and ownership. Mature organizations treat frameworks as tools for assurance, not obstacles to bypass, ensuring controls genuinely protect systems and data. From an exam perspective, candidates should focus on selecting appropriate frameworks, mapping responsibilities, and producing verifiable evidence. Questions may test knowledge of ISO standards, SOC report types, and cloud-specific tools like CSA CCM or FedRAMP. Success depends on connecting frameworks to real-world practices. Who is responsible for what, how evidence is collected, and how assurance is communicated. Exam relevance emphasizes reasoning, not memorization. For example, recognizing when to use ISO 27018 for privacy, or understanding how SOC 2 differs from SOC 1. Candidates must also identify anti-patterns, such as over-relying on provider attestations without tenant validation. Mastery of frameworks demonstrates the ability to navigate the shared responsibility model, ensuring compliance is both efficient and defensible. This aligns directly with real-world cloud roles, where professionals must demonstrate not only knowledge but also practical judgment. In conclusion, compliance frameworks like ISO certifications, SOC attestations, and cloud-specific standards provide the common language and evidence base for trustworthy operations. They transform security and privacy promises into structured commitments backed by independent validation. Mapping and scoping define boundaries, while evidence management and continuous compliance ensure adherence. Multi-framework harmonization and responsibility matrices streamline efforts, while overlays and supply chain assurance extend coverage. Reporting, readiness, and lessons learned ensure frameworks evolve with business and regulation. Avoiding anti-patterns keeps compliance genuine and sustainable. Ultimately, these frameworks empower organizations to prove their security posture to regulators, customers, and themselves. They are not bureaucratic hurdles but enablers of trust, allowing innovation in the cloud to proceed with confidence that obligations are met, risks are managed, and evidence is always at hand. Thanks for tuning in to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, your trusted source for cybersecurity news and insights. Remember to subscribe at baremetalcyber.com so you never miss an update. And visit cyberauthor.me for best-selling cybersecurity books that equip you with expert knowledge. Until next time, stay secure and stay vigilant.